All right, folks, buckle up because the Texas Senate primary just delivered one of the most shocking political plot twists of the night. Representative Jasmine Crockett, once hyped by some Democrats as a rising star, has just been defeated in the Democratic primary, and the fallout is already lighting up the political world. Instead, voters handed the win to James Tallarico, whose campaign managed to surge past Crockett in a race that many insiders thought would be far closer. Now, the big question isn't just why Crockett lost, it's what this says about the direction of Democratic politics in Texas, the shifting voter coalition, and whether the party's strategy in the state is starting to crack under pressure. So what actually happened in this race? Why did Crockett come up short? And what does this result mean for the brutal Senate battle ahead? Let's break it all down.
Millions of Americans hitting the polls yesterday for a handful of pivotal primaries last night, including key races in North Carolina, Arkansas, and Texas.
Meantime, Doug Lazader joins us live from Washington with the results. Doug.
Hey, good morning, guys. A lot of races to talk about, so let's start with that Texas Senate race that attracted so much attention and money. On the Democratic side, James Tallarico defeated Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in that hotly contested primary. In a victory speech, Tallarico said he was going to take back Texas.
This movement is about whether the people will hold the power in this state and in this country. We launched this underdog campaign 6 months ago in my hometown of Round Rock, Texas. And since then, tens of thousands of Texans have shown up to rally with us in every corner of the state.
All right, Jasmine Crockett, meantime, cited voting issues in Dallas and said that, in her words, people have been disenfranchised. Now, we don't know yet what Republican Tallarico is going to face. The Republican race there is going to come down to a runoff in May between Senator John Cornyn and State Attorney General Ken Paxton in what has been a bruising primary. A few other races also in Texas. State Representative Steve Toth defeated Congressman Dan Crenshaw in the GOP primary. Shifting now to North Carolina, where former Governor Roy Cooper picked up the Democratic nomination for the now open Senate seat there. He'll go on to face former RNC Chairman Michael Whatley, who won the Republican primary. In Arkansas, Senator Tom Cotton easily won his primary, as expected. For Democrats, the nod went to Hallie Schaffner. And back to that high-profile Texas race for a moment. It's worth noting that no Democrat has won a statewide race in Texas in more than 30 years. Todd National.
But if Republicans keep spending all their money on a primary, which is look like it's going to happen into May 26th, I don't know. That does leave a little bit of an opening for Democrats, so we will see. Doug, thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're going to bring in Aaron McGuire from Axiom Strategies. Aaron, thanks for getting up with us. Your reaction to this last night?
There's a lot of big stories coming out right now out of last night's election, and one of them is going to be the Latino vote in Texas. That's really what propelled James Tallarico over Jasmine Crockett. And Jasmine Crockett is set to likely, this will likely be the end of her political career as we know it. She had to not run in the primary for her House seat, so I imagine you'll see her leftist nonsense all over the news going forward, including her election denialism here. But that Latino vote you see in Texas is going to be a key indicator going not only into the runoff for Republicans, but also into the general election. This is a base that moved quite frequently. You saw a big move in the 2024 election for those Latino voters toward Republicans. And are we going to see that pendulum swing back? With this runoff coming in May, you will see what is going to continue to be one of the most expensive primary in U.S. history. All eyes on Texas.
The Democrats, they have their pick. They're set. Do you think this is going to hurt the Republicans at all? Because they have a little bit of work to do.
Yeah, there is going to be no love lost between Ken Paxton and John Cornyn in this, 3-month runoff, the runoff into May here. And you're going to see a lot of money, like I said, come in. Senator Cornyn had about $70 million come in to try and propel him in this primary. To Ken Paxton's about $5 million. And there's, like I said, no love lost between the two of them. But the good news is this is the earliest primary on the calendar, right? We saw it here in March. The runoff is in May. And let me tell you, that is still a lot of time, politically speaking, into the general election. So even in what will be an incredibly bruising fight between two Texas heavyweights, you will see there is plenty of time for them to run on their record and run on their message versus James Tallarico, who is a good fundraiser, but is really a wolf in sheep's clothing when it comes to being a radical leftist and not a right fit for Texas as a senator.
So do you think the Democrats stand any chance of flipping this? I don't know if you heard Doug Luzader there right before we came to you. He said that there's been no Democrat that has won a state primary in 30 years.
Yeah, I call it the big Texas blue fever dream they have every cycle, where Democrats play this game where they dump hundreds of millions of dollars into Texas just to light it on fire. You can look at Beto, I was born to do it, Robert Francis O'Rourke. You can look at Colin Allred. You can look at the lady in the sneakers who stood on the Texas floor. Texas Democrats are trying to play the long game here, where they think they can slowly move the electorate versus trying to win flat out. Tallarico is the quote unquote moderate that Democrats wanted versus the radical of Jasmine Crockett, but now they get to litigate Tallarico's stance. He's never really had anybody push him in a race before, so this is going to be one that is going to see Democrats yet again spend a lot of money, likely, and for not the result of a victory. This will remain a Republican Senate seat.
Okay, Aaron McGuire, always great to get your take. Thanks so much.
Well, another election night, another reminder that political hype doesn't always survive contact with actual voters. The Texas Senate Democratic primary just delivered a rather inconvenient reality check for Representative Jasmine Crockett, who entered the race with plenty of attention, plenty of headlines, and apparently not quite enough votes. Instead, the victory went to James Tallarico, whose campaign quietly gathered momentum, while the political chatter class spent months debating who the next rising star of the party might be. Turns out the voters had their own opinion on that question. Funny how that works. For weeks, commentators and partisan strategists talked about this race as if it was some kind of inevitable stepping stone moment, the sort of political coronation that happens when the right endorsements, media buzz, and social media applause all line up in a neat little row. But elections have a stubborn habit of ignoring the script written by pundits, and this one clearly didn't read the memo. Now, to be fair, losing a primary isn't exactly a scandal. It happens. Politics is competitive by design. But what makes moments like this so entertaining purely from a commentary standpoint is the sudden scramble afterward to explain what just happened. Within hours, analysts were dissecting voter coalitions, demographic shifts, ideological branding, campaign messaging, turnout patterns, and about 12 other factors that conveniently appear only after the results are already on the screen. Apparently the Latino vote mattered, apparently grassroots energy mattered, apparently moderation versus ideological positioning mattered. Amazing how these insights arrive right on schedule once the ballots have already been counted. It's almost as if elections are decided by voters rather than by panel discussions on cable news. And then, of course, comes the broader Texas storyline, the one that gets replayed every election cycle, like a political rerun. You know the one, the endless debate about whether Texas is about to turn blue. Every few years, millions of dollars, dozens of campaign ads, and a mountain of optimistic commentary pour into the state under the assumption that this is finally the moment when the political map flips. Yet the results continue to produce the same awkward pause afterward, where everyone politely pretends this time was different. Maybe the long-term demographic trends will eventually change the equation. Politics evolves after all, but for now the scoreboard still looks stubbornly familiar. Meanwhile, the Texas Senate race moves on, the Republican primary heads toward its own dramatic showdown, and Democrats regroup around their nominee. The campaign speeches will shift to unity, strategy will pivot to the general election, and the pundit class will produce a fresh set of confident predictions about what happens next. Because if there's one thing political commentary never lacks, it's certainty, right up until the moment the voters prove it wrong again.